Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. 12 years ago, I was married to Angela, a woman I thought was the most beautiful I had ever seen. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, and a vibrant spirit. We had a strong connection, shared laughter, and many experiences. However, there was one problem we could not seem to overcome. Sometimes we struggled with physical closeness. I was not very confident, and although Angela was always supportive, she made it clear that we needed to strengthen our bond in other ways as well. She told me she loved me for who I was, and I believed her. We got married right after college. I found a job at a large accounting firm near Washington, D.C., and Angela got a great job at a growing company. Life was good. We saved money, bought a townhouse, and enjoyed traveling and shared hobbies like golf and tennis. We made wonderful memories on trips, learned to dive, and had many dinner dates. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Still, that one issue silently lingered. I tried hard to meet her needs, but I often felt inadequate. She never made fun of me, but sometimes she would say things that reminded me of my fears. I wanted to believe she was only joking, but looking back, maybe I should have asked more. Angela once said that if she ever felt something was wrong, she would let me know. I thought we had an understanding and a solid relationship. One day, Angela came home with exciting news. She had been invited to a business seminar in New York City, which was an excellent chance for her career. I was thrilled for her and completely supportive. I imagined that this new opportunity could lead us to the next chapter of our lives, maybe even starting a family. We spent a lovely evening before her trip, enjoying each other's company and sharing a gentle moment. She promised to be the best wife she could be, and I believed her. Angela spoke about New York with enthusiasm, the city that never sleeps. Her company had arranged comfortable accommodations and a generous allowance for her stay. The schedule was light, allowing time for her to explore the city. While attending the seminar, she met many people, including one man named Glenn Matthews. He stood out not for being bold, but for his calm nature. He seemed different from others, who were often loud or boastful. They ended up sitting together at the seminar, and out of empathy, Angela accepted his invitation for dinner. They talked about their lives, and Glenn opened up about his struggles. Angela found his honesty refreshing. He was genuine and did not try to impress her. They connected in a quiet, emotional way. Angela described it as a moment of human connection rather than something romantic. She later told me she hadn't expected anything to happen during the trip, and I wanted to believe that. However, people can drift apart when they feel unfulfilled emotionally. She later admitted she had tried to stay loyal, insisting she loved me and never wanted to hurt me, but sometimes lines become blurred. She regretted what happened and wished she had been stronger. At the time, I didn't know any of this. When she returned, things felt different. Even though she smiled, there was a distance in her eyes. I eventually found a recording she made, perhaps to express her feelings or confess without having a confrontation. The recording was partially damaged after I broke the disc in shock and pain. Restoring it revealed some heartbreaking truths, and listening was one of the toughest things I had ever done. This was just her side of the story. After she shares hers, I will share mine. For now, I am still trying to understand everything: love, disappointment, forgiveness, and whether two people can recover from a serious rift. I thought Glenn was just another lonely person and that I could manage the situation without much thought. I didn't expect to feel so overwhelmed. When I met him, he was gentle, but the moment surprised me. I wasn't prepared for it, physically or emotionally, and it became much harder than I had imagined. That evening, I felt exhausted and restless. He asked if we could meet again the next night. I nodded, still unsure of what I was doing or how I would explain things. I returned to my hotel room and realized I needed to call Caden. My phone showed several missed calls from him, even one to the hotel. I knew I had to be honest. When I called back, he sounded worried. "Angela, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you all evening." I couldn't lie to him. "Caden," I said carefully, You remember how I used to say there might come a time when I'd need more than you could provide? There was a pause. He sounded confused. Angela, what do you mean? I met someone, I replied quietly. You met someone? He asked, surprised. Yes. His name is Glenn. He's from Omaha. We had dinner. He was kind to me. Caden sighed. Angela. You? I took a deep breath. I didn't plan for this. I didn't go looking for it, but he was alone and seemed to need support, too. Another long pause followed. Are you saying you two? Yes, Caden. He fell silent, and I could feel his heart break in the quiet. I tried to explain. It wasn't just about that. It was about connecting, something I didn't expect. But I know I hurt you, and I'm really sorry. I just felt you deserved to know the truth. Caden's voice was soft. Was he? He was different, yes, I said. But Caden, that doesn't change how much I care about you. He didn't answer for a moment before saying quietly, Right. I wanted to reassure him. I'll be home soon. It's just one more night. I want to come back and fix things. I'll do everything I can to show you that you're important to me. Please just wait for me. I heard a faint sob on the other end. It was tough to listen to, knowing he was in pain, but I believed we could mend our relationship. We just had to work through it. The next day at the seminar, I sat near Glenn again, but my mind was elsewhere. He made me feel valued, yet I wasn't sure if that truly mattered. We spoke again that night, but my emotional confusion increased. Afterward, I returned to my room feeling drained. I called Caden again, and although he answered, he was quiet. We exchanged simple conversation. He asked when I would be home. I told him I loved him and missed him. He didn't say much in return, just that he hoped I had a safe trip. That gave me hope. Maybe he just needed time. The next morning, after a polite goodbye to Glenn, I boarded my flight back home. I felt exhausted, guilty, confused, but also a bit relieved. I had learned a lot about myself, the choices I made, and the pain I might have caused. When the plane landed at the airport, I felt anxious about returning home and unsure of what I would find. All I knew was that I wanted to see Caden. I needed to make things right again. As I pulled into our townhouse parking lot, I stepped out, took my suitcase and briefcase, and walked to the front door. My heart felt heavy, but I hoped that seeing each other would help us start to repair our relationship. I had called when I landed, but my message went to the answering machine. When I called Caden on his cell, he answered but said he was busy and would get in touch, then hung up. I figured his abrupt response was because he was still upset, but I thought he knew I would want to discuss things soon. I wasn't worried. I believed everything would be okay. With my luggage in hand, I went to the front door. As expected, it was locked. I wasn't concerned. It was a Friday, which meant he was at work. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Everything was clean and quiet, just as I had left it. Caden was like me, somewhat of a neat freak. I walked through the living room, the dining room, and into the kitchen. Everything looked in order. I checked the clock. He would probably be home in a few hours. I decided to go upstairs and take a cool bath. As I entered the bathroom, I noticed something seemed off. None of Caden's bathroom items were there. I opened his side of the medicine cabinet and noticed none of his supplies were left, only the scented soaps I had bought for him. Caden's other things were missing too. I thought, this must be a mistake. I stepped from the bathroom to our bedroom. Everything appeared normal, but I checked the closets. All my clothes were there, but Caden's things were gone. I sat on the bed, confused about how angry he might have been. I dialed his cell phone again, and he answered. Caden said, Angela? I replied, You know it's me. Where are you, and where are your things? He answered, I told you I'd reach out when I was ready. I didn't like the way he sounded. His voice felt empty. I said, I need you to come back. And where's your stuff? He responded, I said I'd be in touch. Don't worry about it. Then he hung up. Saying I was angry would be an understatement. I was really upset. I tried his number again, but only got his voicemail. That made it worse. I knew my husband well. His job often had clients flying in for meetings. Caden's assistant usually booked hotels, either the Marriott or the Hampton Inn. I went to the hotels I knew he used, and sure enough, I found his car in a good spot at the Hampton. He was predictable. I noticed a diner down the street and drove there. There he was, eating as usual, 2 eggs, bacon, and pancakes. I walked in, told the waitress who I was, and approached his booth. He looked up and said, "Hello, Angela. I see you're back. Must be tiring for you." I sat down across from him and said, "Yes, I'm tired and frustrated too. I came home and it seems like you've moved out. Can we talk about this?" He didn't smile or frown. His tone was flat as he said, "That's right. I've moved out." I decided it was time to take charge. "Well, I'm back now. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Where's your stuff? We can get you moved back in, and then we can have a nice dinner." He just sat there, his food getting cold. He didn't respond at all. I could tell he was torn about what to say. I tried to reassure him. "Caden, there's no need to apologize. I understand, but it's okay. Let's get you back home and fix things." Then he surprised me. He said, "I'm tired, Angela. I've had enough. I admit it. You're the better one." I realized I had made a mistake. I whispered, "Caden, please. I'm really sorry. Just come home. Let's go home." He put his fork down, covered his mouth with his hands, looking like he might cry. He said, 3 years. We've been married 3 years. It hasn't been terrible, has it?" That scared me. I reached across the table and held his hands. He let me. "Caden, I didn't mean it. It was all a mistake. I love you. Let's go home." He took my hands and replied, "You know I love you, Angela. But it's time. I have to let you go. I'm sorry. I can't give you what you need. I'll reach out." But I didn't know what to do or say. I stood up, looked down at the man I truly loved, and realized my big mistake. How could I have been so careless? I said, "No, Caden, please." He still didn't say anything. I felt a deep sadness and managed to smile. "Okay, when you are ready, call me, and I'll help you gather your things to come back." He smiled faintly, and a tear rolled down his cheek. I couldn't take it. I stepped back and left. This all happened on a Friday. The following Wednesday, I got the papers. Everything was settled peacefully. We split things equally. He offered me the house and even promised to cover the mortgage for 2 years. I felt crushed. I needed to take the rest of the week off. I stayed in bed, unable to do anything but cry. I thought about Caden, and it hurt more than I expected. I tried calling him, but it just went to voicemail. He was gone. I realized I had pushed him away. I felt sorry for what I did. I listened to the recordings about Angela's situation, but shut them off. I cared about her deeply. It broke my heart. I felt inadequate. Looking in the mirror, all I saw was failure. I could earn money, but no one would want me. There would be no children, no family time, no life. Word spread at the office. They knew about my situation. I was just the laughing stock. No one wanted to be around me. I rented a small townhouse near work and buried myself in my job. Angela tried to call. She wanted to talk, to explain, to apologize, but I knew it was pointless. If we got back together, she would leave again. So it was best to stay away. It took me 6 months to feel somewhat normal again. There were no women in my life. People tried to be nice, at least a little. For Angela's sake, I kept our club membership active, even though I hadn't used it in a long time. One day, Jeannie Dunlap came into my office. "Mr. Meadows," she said, "I could use your help." I had heard rumors about Jeannie, but she had always been polite and a good worker. I replied, "Sure, what do you need?" She hesitated, then said, "My car's in the shop, and I was wondering if you could take me to the office party on Friday. No one else will ask me, and I'm a bit nervous about getting there on my own." I was surprised. This was Jeannie asking me to be her guest. I thought it was too complicated. "I'm sorry, Miss Dunlap, but I hadn't planned on going," I said gently. She nodded. "I understand. Most people don't want to be seen with me. I thought maybe we could have an early dinner, just the two of us, somewhere low-key, and you might change your mind." I thought she might be pushing me, but I also remembered that I liked her. So I said, "If you send me your address for dinner at 5 p.m., I'll pick a place." She wrote down her address and asked if it could be casual. I agreed. That conversation was around 10 a.m. I had the whole day to think about it. After a lot of back and forth in my mind, I decided it wasn't a bad idea. Just dinner, low pressure. I chose a quiet seafood restaurant not far from my old neighborhood. My ex rarely liked that place, but it would be a quiet setting on a Tuesday. I made a reservation for a corner booth at 5:30. I arrived at her apartment at 5 p.m. As I parked, I saw her standing at the door. She wore a dark coat, and her hair was down in the cold evening wind. She got in, and I closed the door. "There's a seafood place not far. It's called the Weathered Scupper. Is seafood okay?" She smiled brightly, and I noticed her cheerful smile. She was small, around 5'2". She had red hair and bright green eyes, and even in December her face was sprinkled with freckles. I found myself curious if her hair was really that color. I smiled at the thought. There was only one way to know for sure. But her smile faded as she said, "I have two things to share. First, I love seafood. I've been to the Weathered Scupper, and their stuffed flounder is amazing. But isn't it a bit expensive?" I nodded. "It is a bit pricey, but I enjoy their salmon. You mentioned two things." With a serious look, she said, "I noticed your expression. I'm not as fast as you might think. Sure, I might have a bottle of wine in my fridge, but all we're doing tonight is a friendly handshake." I chuckled. "You know your men. I was just curious." She smiled again. "I am a natural redhead." I laughed at that. We went to the restaurant. She ordered the flounder, and I chose the salmon. We shared a plate of crab dip as an appetizer. Our conversation was limited. I talked about college, my family, and my 3 siblings. She mentioned that her father had passed away from a heart issue, and that she had 2 older brothers in Ellicott City. Her mother lived in Hagerstown with her sister. It sounded like we both had good childhoods. The main difference seemed to be our educational paths. I went straight to Shippensburg while she took longer, starting with a year off and then going to community college before finishing at Frostburg. She said her college experience felt unproductive since she studied English. I found that funny because I started as an English major, too. I noticed a few things about her that I hadn't at work. She was petite. Another coworker, Angela, was curvier, but Jeannie was slender and dressed nicely. Once she took off her coat, I thought she was quite attractive. Although she was probably in her 30s, she had a youthful look that was captivating. I had only seen her in the office, where she wore plain jumpers or business suits. However, tonight was different. She wore a fitted blouse and a plaid skirt with tights and heels that highlighted her legs well. I felt a bit nervous during our conversation. Jeannie had a lovely face, and while I had always thought she was attractive, I hadn't really paid much attention to her at work. Her green eyes and freckles added to her charm, making her look like someone from a magazine. Unfortunately, her beauty made me feel a bit inadequate. We finished dinner around 7:30. Jeannie decided to skip dessert, and I drove her home. The ride was quiet, but when we got to her apartment, she surprised me by saying, "I thought about inviting you in, but I changed my mind." I felt both relieved and disappointed. On one hand, it protected me from any awkwardness, but it also seemed to suggest that there wasn't a strong connection. Then Jeannie said something unexpected. "I like you, Caden. You're a good man. I mean it. I had fun tonight, which is why you're not coming upstairs. I know what people say, and I'm not comfortable with that." I nodded, wanting to show that I understood. She continued, "No, you don't get it. People think that letting someone close means I'm easy. I've made mistakes before, but I won't again, especially not with you." I listened, though I was a bit unsure how to reply. I asked, "Want to go out again tomorrow night?" Looking taken aback, she replied, "Just a date?" I said, "Just dinner." She agreed, and we set a time. I proposed 6:30 instead of earlier, hoping to change the mood a little. She responded positively. 6:30 sounds good. Still casual?" I thought differently, but said I wanted to see her in a dress. Her happy reaction made me smile, and as she walked up the stairs, I felt a burst of joy. The next day brought excitement. My colleagues asked about my night out, and when a curious coworker asked about my plans for the Christmas party, I jokingly hinted at having a date. Jeannie stopped by my office, winked at me, and mimed 6:30, to which I grinned, and she confirmed she would wear a dress. I picked her up that evening, and she was waiting in a warm brown coat. After helping her into the car, she asked about the restaurant. I suggested the Iron Gate Wine House, a popular spot where many go to be seen. She hesitated and asked, "Are you sure? Do you want to be seen with me?" I lightly touched her shoulder and complimented her earrings, making her cheeks blush. "I want to take you. I'd be honored," I said sincerely. As she fastened her seatbelt, a brief moment of vulnerability passed between us, and she seemed to have something to say but stopped short. I redirected the conversation, saying I enjoyed our dinner and was excited to spend more time with her as friends. We'd attend the Christmas party as friends, just friends, that was it. She wouldn't meet my gaze. Who would have thought Jeannie Dunlap could be shy? I thought I knew women, but perhaps I didn't. At the Iron Gate, I ordered steak, and Jeannie chose sirloin tips. I got a small bottle of wine, and we each had a glass. We talked a little about work, but mostly about sports. I didn't know Jeannie liked football. I had to admit that I did too. We even supported the same team. After dinner, I walked her home and to her front door. I didn't push for more. I was content. We agreed I would pick her up at 7 o'clock for the Christmas party with dinner at 7:30. I needed a moment to breathe. Maybe I was feeling hesitant or just nervous. I hardly slept at all Wednesday night, replaying thoughts of my lovely evenings with the woman who was supposed to be the talk of the office. Was I being set up? After all, she had shown interest in me. I figured that many women at work were aware of my situation. My ex-wife had mentioned it during gatherings before our divorce. Was Jeannie part of a joke? Had I unwittingly become the focus of their curiosity? When I arrived at work Thursday, I was a bundle of nerves, ready to cancel our date. Yet Jeannie approached me before I could settle in. Even before I took off my coat, she stood at my office door. "Mr. Meadows, may I come in?" I turned and sat behind my desk, wanting to keep some distance. "Sure," I said. "Come on in." She asked, "May I please sit?" I pointed to the farthest chair. "Of course." She sat down, looking uneasy, and said, "I don't think tomorrow night is a good idea." "What?" I thought, feeling alarmed. "Why? What's wrong?" She replied, "Somebody saw us last night. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. I think—" I glanced at the open door, aware of others nearby. Quietly, I asked, "Have you picked a dress?" With teary eyes, she whispered, "Yes, I have a black." That changed everything for me. I stood up and walked around my desk to her. I reached out my hand to help her up, feeling her stiffen slightly as I placed my hand on her back. I opened my office door and spoke clearly. "Yes, I think your black dress would be perfect for the Christmas party. I'll wear my good black suit. It will match well. Is 7 p.m. still good for you?" I looked down at her and smiled. She seemed worried but nodded. "All right," I said. "Let's get back to work." Watching her walk back to her desk, I returned to my office, leaving the door wide open. I picked up the phone and called the florist I used to order from for my ex-wife. While waiting for the florist, I reflected on Jeannie's earlier comment about us actually liking each other. Friendships can grow no matter what others think. We would show them. I reassured myself that I wouldn't do anything to embarrass her. I hadn't felt this confident in a long time. It felt good. Thursday and Friday went by quietly. No one talked to me about anything besides work. Jeannie walked past me a couple of times on Thursday, looking nervous. But by Friday, she seemed more at ease. It all came down to Friday night. On Friday afternoon, I walked through the office and noticed most people had already left. Jeannie was still working hard. I asked, "Why are you still here? Everyone else is likely at home getting ready for tonight." She barely looked up but replied, "I want to finish organizing this information on our new client. If I get it done now, it will come together over the weekend in time for you." I leaned in and jokingly hit Control, Alt, Delete. "I don't want it ready on Monday. I will probably be too tired after the weekend." She sighed at me. "Now I'll have to redo everything on Monday." I laughed. "Good. Now go home, take a nap, and get ready for the party." Standing up, she smiled and said, "Aye, aye, Captain." She looked different, too. Gone was the plain suit. She wore a lovely brown blazer, a dark brown skirt, and a crisp white blouse, her glasses adding to her charm. I helped her with her coat and felt happy as she left the office. Later that evening, I arrived at the parking lot. She was waiting at the door, made of glass. I got out of my car as she walked down the steps. I raised my hands and asked, "What do you think you're doing?" She paused and looked unsure. "I don't," I explained. "Turn around and go back upstairs. Your apartment is 303, right? Go back, take off your coat, and sit where you like. I'll be right up. I'll knock and you wait. Only after I knock a second time should you come to the door." She looked confused, so I added, "Someone as lovely as you should keep their date waiting a little. I want to wait because it will remind me how lucky I am to have such a wonderful companion tonight." I showed her the package with her corsage and said, "I won't put this on until we're inside the club. I don't want it to get damaged." She gave me a beautiful smile and turned to head back upstairs. I watched her reach her apartment door on the 3rd floor before making my way up. I knocked, checked the time on my watch, and waited a full 20 seconds before knocking again. Jeannie opened her door. "Hello, stranger," she said, stepping back to let me in. I looked around her apartment. She had great taste. Her living room and dining area formed an L shape, and I saw her kitchen off to the left. Everything looked elegant and refined. I asked, "Are we ready?" Jeannie said, "Let me get my coat." She got it, and I helped her put it on. I admired her outfit. It was more than just a little black dress. It took my breath away. It fit perfectly and looked smooth and elegant. Just before I helped her with her coat, I asked, "Would you?" She understood. With a gentle twirl, she showed me how lovely she looked in the dress, which sat just below her shoulders and above her knees. She looked stunning, with her hair in a thick braid and light makeup that highlighted her large green eyes. The only word I could think of to describe her was elegant. I told her, "You look so graceful. You're like a red-headed Grace Kelly." I always thought Grace Kelly was one of the most beautiful figures in the world. With her coat on, I asked, "Shall we go?" She nodded and said, "If it pleases you." I was very pleased. I offered my arm and she placed her hand in the crook of my elbow. The party was the best thing that had happened to me in years. When we arrived at the club, a band was playing a mix of soothing country songs, classic hits, and some lively rock tunes. I loved the blend of slow and fast songs. Everyone's eyes were on Jeannie and me as we entered. Many people didn't expect me to come, especially with Jeannie Dunlap. People gathered in the lobby area for snacks and drinks. After mingling for a few minutes, we went to the main dining room. As the supervisor of sorts, Jeannie and I got to sit at the first table, surrounded by 12 older folks. Jeannie was the youngest woman there, and I was the second youngest man. Everyone seemed aware of Jeannie's reputation, but the boss's wives were polite. Jeannie was warm and friendly, engaging in conversation, agreeing when it was right to agree and listening when it was appropriate. All the wives liked that. Despite the whispers, Jeannie showed none of the behavior people talked about. She was the epitome of grace. I was proud to have her as my date, even if I felt I shouldn't be. I enjoyed the jealous looks we got from others. Throughout the evening, I had 3 drinks before dinner arrived. We had the typical chicken, pork tenderloin, green beans with almonds, and parsley potatoes. By dessert time, I had a few glasses of champagne and another drink. I was proud of my ability to enjoy my drinks, but I had to admit I was feeling a little lightheaded. Then I thought it was time to dance. Jeannie and I got out there, and I felt confident. I danced away to the music, whether it was a 2-step, waltz, or a fast tune. I noticed everyone seemed to be smiling and looking our way. I asked Jeannie, "What's wrong?" She smiled brightly and said, "You're a little out of step, but that's okay. No one cares." I had no idea, just knew I was having a great time. At one point, we found ourselves dancing alone to applause from our co-workers and their partners. I was fully in the moment, and Jeannie was beaming and supporting me. Around midnight, some of us moved back to the comfort of the plush sofas in the lobby. I remember talking, but the details were fuzzy. Jeannie later mentioned that after midnight, I was too tired to keep up. She let me rest my head on her shoulder, then on her lap. She said I got a bit too cozy. Some co-workers helped me to my car and settled me into the passenger seat. Jeannie drove me to her place where others helped me get inside. She said she helped me get into bed while she chose the couch. The next morning, I woke up with a huge headache and no memory of the night before. I spent that Saturday at Jeannie's, mostly resting and complaining about the light. She took good care of me with tomato juice and coffee and kept a cool cloth on my forehead. At some point, she drove to my place and got some clothes for me. Saturday night, even though I wasn't very hungry, she managed to get me to eat a little scrambled eggs. She encouraged me to clean up and sent me home around 8 p.m., but not before I made her promise to go out with me again. I arrived at work late on Monday, having slept most of Sunday. When I got up that morning, I couldn't find my wallet. After searching everywhere, I called work, and they connected me to Jeannie. She told me I had left it behind and that she'd brought it in. I asked why she hadn't called. She said she left a message on my phone, and I realized I didn't have that either. So it was well after 10 o'clock when I made it to work. There was an email from Angela and a message from the partners wanting to see me. I thought, oh. I skipped Angela's email and went to see my bosses. They were in a meeting but let me in anyway. My company had 2 partners, both older men, Gilbert Moravia and William Perth. They stopped what they were doing and asked me to have a seat. That made me really nervous. Mr. Perth started, "Caden, what do you remember about Friday night?" I smiled and shrugged, saying, "I know I had a good time." Mr. Moravia chuckled, "You were quite a hit." I smiled but didn't mean it. Jeannie said, Mr. Moravia interrupted, "You know there's a morals clause in our work contract." I knew that, but didn't think it applied if nothing was happening. I explained, "Jeannie and I are just office friends. She needed a—" Mr. Perth stepped in. "We already spoke with Miss Dunlap, and she offered to resign if—" I interrupted, "No, she can't do that. Mr. Moravia stopped me. "We told her no. Now let me tell you what we explained to her." I sat quietly, listening. Mr. Moravia continued, "There's no problem as long as she doesn't claim any issues about her work. We don't think she will. But there could be a problem if someone else feels she might get special treatment because of her connection to you. If that happens, Mr. Meadows, we will hold you responsible. Got it?" I nodded. Mr. Moravia added one more thing. "The only other note is if any relationship leaks beyond this office. If someone like a client or someone in human resources raises concerns, it could be an issue." Mr. Perth said, "What we're saying is that you and Miss Dunlap need to be careful. We've warned you. We don't want any trouble." I replied, "We'll be careful, I promise." Mr. Perth said, "That's all." As I got up to leave, Mr. Moravia stopped me. He said one more thing. "Caden, you're a good employee. You've been an example to the others, but honestly, since your divorce and before that, you weren't quite what we hoped for. Friday night, we saw a side of you we hadn't seen before. Caden, we liked it. Maybe we're wrong, but Jeannie seems to be a refreshing presence for you. Treat her with respect. Do you understand?" I smiled and said, "Yes, sir, I do. I assure you, no problems." I left, realizing that I had been warned but also received support. Back at my desk, I needed to read Angela's email and call Jeannie. I opened the email. I was surprised to see that Angela had been at the club Friday night. I hadn't noticed her, but she'd seen me. This is what she wrote. "Dear Caden, I saw you that night. You looked so happy. I think I remember Miss Dunlap. I admit I was a bit envious. Anyway, Caden, I wanted to tell you again that I care about you. I've always cared about you. I miss you terribly. I truly apologize for my past actions. I realize I caused a lot of trouble, and I will feel remorse for it always. However, I am happy to see that you have moved on. If you ever think of me, I hope you think positively. Please know that I think about you constantly. Best wishes, Angela." I stopped and reflected on her email. I read it multiple times, but quickly understood that I had also moved on. I even recognized that I might have someone else in my life now. I deleted her message. It was time to look forward. I reached for my phone and called Jeannie. She answered immediately. "Hello, Caden?" "Hi, I heard the bosses called you in." "They wouldn't let me resign. I'm glad they didn't," she replied. "I'm glad too. Can I see you after work?" There was a brief silence before she said, "I still have an unopened bottle of wine in the fridge. Do you like pizza?" "I love pizza. How about 6 p.m.? 6 it is, I have to go now," she said as she ended the call. I sat back, realizing it had only been a week since all the changes. However, I had known Jeannie for years and often appreciated her company. We had partnered up for work projects many times, and I had so much to share with her. Tonight felt significant. The rest of the workday was smooth. Colleagues dropped by with comments that hinted at recent events. Reactions ranged from supportive to slightly inappropriate remarks. I responded with a blank expression, though a few supportive comments stood out. One senior colleague mentioned, "Caden, we've all been watching you for a while. Friday night eased our worries. Jeannie seems like a good match for you, he added with a wink. However, Lionel, a younger coworker, brought me down by delivering a package with a sarcastic remark. I quickly tossed it into the trash. I reminded myself that Lionel's performance at work was not great, and changes in the office were on the horizon. As I thought about pursuing a connection with Jeannie, I felt uneasy. It wasn't the gossip I was worried about. Rather, I feared how Jeannie would react if things became personal. This thought occupied my mind throughout the afternoon. After work, I went home, napped, showered, shaved, and got ready. Standing in front of the mirror, I thought about Jeannie and how to keep our relationship professional. I really liked her, and tonight could be important. When I arrived at her place, she answered the door quickly and looked lovely. She had styled her hair neatly and wore a pale green blouse with a white apron and a dark brown skirt. I handed her the flowers I had picked up along the way. "Oh, they're lovely," she said. "Let me find a vase for them." I noticed she already had flowers on the table. "Come on in," she invited. "I stopped for some chicken. I thought I'd bake tonight instead of ordering pizza. You can help me with the beans while I get the potatoes in the oven. You like baked potatoes, right?" "I love them, but you really don't have to go through all this trouble," I responded. "I want to." She smiled as she opened the oven. While I snapped the beans, she seasoned the potatoes and put them in the oven. Then she sat down. Her expression grew serious. "Caden, we need to talk." I sensed the seriousness in her tone and guessed it might be about work. "Okay, what's up?" She folded her hands and looked at me intently. "You're what, 28, 29? 29. I'm 31 and I feel old. I'll be 32 soon. You've been with the company for 5 years, right?" "That's right." I opened my mouth to ease her worry about any work issues. "No," she interrupted. "This isn't about work. It's about us. If we could be together." I smiled. "I hope so." Then she said something surprising. "Do you know how many 4-letter words can come from your last name?" I was confused. "No, I've never thought of it." "I can make 47 words from it. Sounds silly, huh? But you're always on my mind." "Really? I didn't tell you the truth about the party. I had other options, but I wanted to go with you." This intrigued me. "Why's that?" "You're the kind of person every girl dreams about. We noticed how you changed after your marriage. We all felt a bit sorry for you, but I'm glad you're free now." I was listening closely as she continued. "Do you know what a shrike is?" "No." "It's a bird that preys on others. Writers sometimes compare people who hurt others to shrikes." I had never heard that word before. "Really?" "Yes, they often don't realize the harm they cause. It's like they can't accept happiness." I nodded, impressed. "You've researched this." "I didn't think of it first. Madeline O'Mara did. She described your ex-wife this way, saying she harmed you without knowing." "She said that?" "Yes, she noticed you behaved differently around her as if you were afraid," Jeannie replied. "Madeline mentioned your ex used words that made you feel small." "What kind of words?" I asked, feeling uncomfortable. "It's hard to explain. They weren't hateful, but they hurt. Madeline recognized how she spoke to you." I shifted in my seat, feeling uneasy about the topic. "Angela, she cheated on me. Everyone knew." Jeannie quickly replied, "Oh, don't get upset, please." "I just need some water," I said as I stood up. "No, I'll get it. Please don't leave," she pleaded. I accepted the glass from her after she filled it. "Okay." Jeannie sat back down, looking small. I wondered what more she wanted to say. Finally, she confessed, "I watched you at work, going to meetings and events. I imagined you chose to work with me." Her words caught me off guard. "You did?" "I guess I have feelings for you," she whispered, her voice almost trembling. I was surprised. "You, like me? I'm sorry. You don't have to feel the same way," she said, looking down. "No, I want to stay," I replied quickly. I felt flattered but nervous. "I really enjoy being around you. I think you're a hard worker." I meant it, but I had not planned on admitting my feelings. Like when you stayed late with the computer, or when we worked on those reviews last fall. Mr. Perth and Mr. Moravia needed someone they could trust. They chose you to work with me because of my recommendation. I told them you are very professional and nice to be around. She asked, so we can be friends? I wouldn't. I stupidly replied, wouldn't what? Right after I said it, I regretted it. I didn't want to ruin a good friendship because of my feelings. Jeannie seemed uneasy. She softly said, you've heard about me and my reputation. I'd like it if we could be closer, but I know how people see me. I leaned back in my chair, resting my arm on the back of the seat beside me. I thought, she has a lovely voice. Everything she says sounds beautiful. I smiled and said, I've heard things, but the stories I heard from men like Lionel Spearman and Chad Everest don't seem quite right. Jeannie sat back then and said, Lionel Spearman. I knew it was him. Can I say something without you getting upset or thinking I'm lying? I assured her. I won't think you're lying. Look, I'm not perfect. I made mistakes in the past. After my dad died, I felt lost. But with my family's support, I found my way again. I went back to school and got this job at Moravia in Perth. I was serious about my future. I nodded, feeling good to hear her open up. She continued, I came to work at Moravia in Perth thinking I was in love, but it was just a passing thing. I believed everything he said, then he moved on and I felt really down. I can imagine that must have hurt, I said. It did, she agreed. Then Chad came along. I was so naive. He spread stories about our time together and I felt angry and disappointed. I didn't want to be remembered that way. I guess I looked a bit disgusted thinking about Chad and Lionel. Jeannie noticed and said, okay, I admit I made mistakes, but I've learned. Now I'm seen in a light I never wanted. She paused and added, you can leave if you want. I wouldn't blame you. I reached across the table and took her hands. If you don't start cooking soon, dinner will be late and I'll be late for work again. We got the chicken started and enjoyed a nice dinner together. Jeannie seemed to love cooking, which I appreciated. After dinner, we relaxed on the sofa and watched some light entertainment. We didn't cuddle much, but she rested her head on my shoulder, and I placed my arm around her back. I could feel her uncertainty about the past, and I understood. I left her apartment a little after 11 p.m. We said a quick goodbye and promised to have dinner again soon. We agreed on Thursday at my place. I'd cook something for her. When I got home, I poured myself a drink, thinking about Jeannie and Angela. I realized that Angela cared for me, but there were fears that worried me in our relationship. I wanted to protect her, just like my dad protected our family. Now, I felt that same urge to take care of Jeannie. I read about how people often think logically, instead of letting their emotions guide them, which complicates their choices. That realization hit me hard. I decided to leave the heavy emotional thoughts for others who could handle them. The next few days were nice. Jeannie and I organized our phone calls and had lunch together in the small office without attracting too much attention. It felt good to see her with her friends, sharing smiles and glances that hinted at something special. There was a quiet understanding among our co-workers that something was growing between us. Chad was out of the office often, but Lionel was there every day. He had survived in the office for years, but Mr. Perth and Mr. Moravia were aware of his actions, thanks to Jeannie and me. Too bad for him, I thought, knowing I would likely have to write his recommendation someday. Thursday night arrived. Jeannie came to my house just before 7 o'clock. I had a delicious meal planned: lasagna, garlic bread, and salad with Caesar dressing. I knew it would be good because I ordered from the best Italian restaurant nearby. I don't cook. When Jeannie arrived, I took her coat and opened a bottle of fine red wine. We enjoyed the wine and then ate our meal. She praised me for the dinner, and when I showed her the packaging, she complimented it even more. After dinner, I brought out the brownies I had bought, keeping them in the fridge to stay fresh. We each had one, and after clearing the table, we settled in to watch a DVD I picked out. It was a romantic movie I knew she would enjoy. Pretty Woman, with Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. I had heard it was a favorite among women. Yes, I pulled out all the stops. We snacked on some chocolate treats and had more wine while watching the movie. She looked beautiful in a white blouse and dark brown slacks. I wore a white shirt but had to change when I spilled sauce on it, which she found funny. Before and during dinner, we talked casually about work, but once the movie started, we were quiet. I wondered how many times she had seen it. She seemed to know all the lines. As the film came to an end, I decided to bring up something more serious. I had my arm resting on the couch just behind her shoulder and our faces were close. I said, "You know, Jeannie, I've been thinking about you a lot. I really like you, and I believe something meaningful could happen if we give it a chance, but I can't let that happen." She looked at me, blinking her big green eyes, and said, "I understand. Some men have their problems and might not be ready for something serious, but I want to keep trying." I leaned back, wanting to clarify, "No, Jeannie, it's not you. It's me. It's about my difficulties." She looked puzzled. "Difficulties? What do you mean?" I hesitated, recalling how she had hinted at it before. "My self-esteem. You know, like what Angela said." Jeannie stared at me for a moment, then looked down. "So you think you're not enough?" I realized how much I trusted her and nodded. She folded her hands in her lap and asked, "Do you think I could see what you're worried about?" I stumbled over my words. "You want to see? There's no need." To my surprise, she shifted, sliding off the couch to kneel on the floor. "Lie down," she said, gently urging me back against the couch. I resisted, but she insisted, "Just lie back. We need to see what's going on." I let her guide me down, feeling a bit exposed. This is all a misunderstanding, I thought. As she checked things in a respectful manner, I couldn't shake the feeling of being vulnerable. I mumbled, "You really don't have to do this," but she was determined to understand. "I see nothing wrong," she said after considering my worries. I looked at her, hesitant. "Really? What do you think?" She responded calmly, "You've been worried for no reason. There's nothing wrong." Her answer surprised me. I was ready for sympathy, but she was straightforward and confident, saying, "You're fine. What do you expect?" Gradually, I realized she had a unique perspective on things. "Well," I said, "I thought I would be judged." She encouraged me, "You're perfectly normal. There's no reason to feel this way." I listened as she explained her viewpoint. Her honesty was refreshing and made me reconsider how I saw myself. I had to admit that I might be too hard on myself. Jeannie told me, "I noticed you're perfectly normal where you are." I cut in, "No, my wife said it was different." She interrupted, "When you look down, everything can seem smaller. Don't be hard on yourself. I've seen my brothers many times." She had plenty to say. It was interesting to hear. She continued, "After my dad died, it was just me, my mom, and my brothers. We had one bathroom, and it was odd, but I sometimes caught glimpses of them." I tried to mention films, but she took charge again. "Yeah, films often show unrealistic standards. You've seen actors, they act in a way that doesn't reflect real feelings." I just listened. Jeannie wrapped up, saying, "You're fine as you are. Nothing is wrong with you. Most people have their preferences, but not everyone demands more." She stood up, clearly frustrated. She went to get her coat from the closet. Turning back, she asked, "Are you going to see me to the door?" I replied, "I'm sorry, Jeannie. You're not leaving, are you?" At my front door, she paused and looked up at me. "You know how I feel about you. I hope we've resolved some of your self-doubt. I want to be close to you, but not tonight, and not soon. We need to talk more. You have issues. I have priorities." As she stepped outside, I called after her, "Do you really mean it? About my—" Jeannie turned back to me. She walked back to the door, lightly touched my chin, and instead of a kiss, she said, "You really are thick." Then she turned and headed to her car. I called out, "Saturday, all day." She turned back with a laugh and replied, "Let's go shopping and see a movie." I shouted and waved, "You got it." Then she drove away. I went back inside and leaned against the door, saying to myself, "I'm okay. I'm okay. Well, she thinks I am." I went straight to my bedroom and found myself thinking about a girl with red hair and big green eyes, reminding me of a character I admired. On Friday morning, I broke our usual rule and emailed Jeannie while we were at work. I lived in Columbia, and she lived close by. With Christmas approaching, the weather was nice and the malls were busy. We chose a place to meet that wouldn't have heavy traffic. I was to pick her up at 11 o'clock on Saturday. Saturday came, and for the first time in a long time, my thoughts were all about her. When I got to her house, she was already waiting just inside the big glass doors. This time, I didn't make her go back upstairs. I walked with her down the sidewalk, helped her into my car, and we were off. We enjoyed a light lunch, visited an old mansion believed to be haunted, and bought some souvenirs. We even watched a movie at the IMAX, although it wasn't as good as we hoped. On the way back, we stopped at a deli for sandwiches. Back at her apartment, we had lunch, and then sat down for an important talk we both knew we needed. Jeannie sat next to me on her sofa and said, "You know there's another guy in my life." My heart sank for a moment. I asked, "What?" She smiled and said, "Want to meet him?" I replied, "Do I have to?" She simply said, "Wait here," and went into her bedroom. A moment later, she returned with a package. She opened it to show me a pink item. "Caden, this has been my special friend for the last few years. There's a reason for it. Want to know why?" I took the item and said, "Sure. I'd like to know why this has been your only companion." Jeannie leaned in slightly and explained, "After my past relationships, I decided I was done with men. I fell in love a few times and felt let down each time. I promised myself not to commit my heart again until I found the right person." I nodded, understanding. I can relate. I thought Angela would always be there for me, and I probably gave up too. Jeannie added, "I made a list of what I want in a partner. I want someone I can trust who will always be there for me, someone who will put me first." I was with her. I realized I had to speak up. I said, "You want a dog." She playfully punched me in the chest, and it actually hurt. Then she smiled and said, "No, Caden. I want the white dress with the long train and the veil. I want someone who'll get down on one knee and give me a ring. Someone who wants the big wedding and to talk about names for our kids, maybe 5 or 6. I want to be able to stay home, bake cookies, and teach Sunday school. I want someone who will argue with me about where to go on vacation, the wallpaper design, where to put the TV, and—" I interrupted. "You can stop now. I get it." She looked at me and I added, "You can tell Pat he's free to go. You found who you've been looking for." She turned her hands over to hold mine and asked, "You mean it?" I replied, "You know I do." "Really?" I saw she was worried. "Jeannie, I've been through what you've been through. I didn't like it." I watched her relax a bit. I continued, "When can I meet your family?" Jeannie leaned back on the sofa and pulled me in. I felt a warm connection between us. We shared something special. Nothing else happened for a while, just a series of tender moments. I knew what I wanted, and it was her. This was different from anything I had felt before. I held her close and pressed my cheek against hers. I thought I had something to say, but her gentle presence made me speechless. We embraced, and I whispered, "No, there's plenty of time. Let's stay here." She leaned into me. It felt like she was floating, light and delicate. I remembered a trip to Niagara Falls, the refreshing mist and foam. She was like fresh air, warmth, and sunshine. We shared soft kisses and gentle touches, wanting nothing more than to enjoy each other's company. There was a unique beauty in our connection. Eventually, we fell asleep, content and peaceful, two hearts connected by love. The next morning was filled with laughter and warm moments. I felt happy and relaxed with her head resting under my arm. She playfully connected with me, and I felt joyful at our sweet exchanges. Later, while having scrambled eggs, I asked, "Are you on any medication or something?" She didn't look at me, saying, "No." I thought about our future. Let's see, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. I frowned and said, "Guess a June wedding's out." She looked nervous. "What?" I said, "June, you'll be 6 months along then. That dress might not fit. We need to plan for early spring if you say yes, and if your mom and brothers are okay with it." She asked, "Are you asking?" I grinned. Yes and no. She looked confused. I added, "Here's the deal. We'll need to get a ring. Then I'll ask your mom for her blessing. Once that's done, we can do something special. You good with that?" She didn't answer, but playfully flicked some egg at me and smiled. "Wow, you've got egg on your face. Of course I'm good with that, but what about work?" I crossed my eyes and replied, "Don't worry. I'll handle that." So we had our first weekend together. How could it get any better? On Sunday afternoon, we discussed where we'd live and how I'd manage work. We agreed that since my house was bigger, we would move her things in with me. We talked about furniture. There were things she liked and things I liked. We settled on a storage unit for the rest and agreed to wait a week or so before the big move. She was excited, but I wanted to meet her family and talk to her mom first, so she called and arranged for next week. We'd go to Hagerstown, where her mom and aunt lived, and her brothers would meet us there. Since both her brothers were married with kids, it looked like a big family gathering. We all got together on Christmas Eve afternoon. It was a weeknight, which was tough for Jeannie's brothers and their families, but they all made it. I was surprised. Even though Jeannie is petite, her brothers were both my size. I'm over 6 feet tall. Her mom and aunt were smaller. Her mom had light brown hair and brown eyes, but her aunt looked just like Jeannie. Everyone was welcoming, but I sensed her mom was a little unsure about me. I didn't say much. I knew gaining trust would take time and good behavior, and I wanted to be good to Jeannie. I got the expected brotherly lecture. They weren't very friendly, but I knew I could change that. I managed to say something good. Her older brother said they didn't expect me to treat Jeannie like royalty. I told them she was already special to me when I met her, and I think that helped. I secretly bought a ring one day without Jeannie. I wanted it to be special. I found the perfect stone and kept it in a box for a special moment at dinner. When her mom brought out the pies, I asked everyone to wait just a moment. I got the box, got down on one knee, opened it and asked, "Jeannie, will you marry me?" She smiled, held out her hand and whispered, "Yes." I slipped the ring on her finger, and after I stood up, we shared a happy moment filled with laughter, especially from one of her nephews. My heart felt full. Jeannie and I talked about work, and she agreed to let me handle things. We kept everything private until after our meeting. On our first day back from Christmas, Jeannie and I drove into the office together, holding hands. She made sure everyone noticed her ring. After I called for a meeting with Mr. Perth and Mr. Moravia, I found myself at the conference table. Mr. Perth asked, "What's on your mind? Is there a problem?" I was nervous, but I said, "Jeannie Dunlap and I are engaged to be married." Both men jumped up, congratulating us and showing their excitement. Mr. Perth immediately called for Jeannie to join us. She looked a bit anxious, thinking one of us might need to leave. They congratulated her warmly, too. I asked, "Is this going to be a problem?" The two managers exchanged glances. Mr. Moravia said, "We should have a little celebration." Mr. Perth added, "Nothing fancy, maybe a small cake." I looked at Jeannie. We hadn't expected anything like that. I pressed, "What about problems?" Mr. Moravia replied, "What problems? You work in different departments and everyone knows you have feelings for each other." Mr. Perth said, "We like both of you. You're hard workers and professional. We wouldn't want to lose either of you." As the meeting wrapped up, I felt relieved and happy. Everything was coming together, and I couldn't wait to start this new chapter with Jeannie. We both said, "Thank you, sirs." After the meeting, Jeannie and I returned to our jobs. Later that week, the office held a small party. We received some gifts, and everyone was curious about our plans. Jeannie and I picked a tentative date in April, but we weren't entirely sure since we still needed to find a venue. The last things on my list at work were dealing with Chad and Lionel. Surprisingly, they treated me well and were nice to Jeannie, too. I realized I had moved on. My life had changed, but there were still some surprises ahead. When it comes to revenge, it can be tricky. My first wife was not the best partner. For reasons I could never understand, Angela decided to be unfaithful. She had blamed her unhappiness on me. For a long time, I felt hurt by her actions, and I often wondered why we had been together at all. But once Jeannie entered my life, my feelings about Angela didn't seem important anymore. I learned that sometimes people have their own problems that don't involve us. I had to let go of the past, and now I thank my luck every day for Jeannie. She showed me I was never the problem. I read that many men feel insecure about their own worth at some point. They worry that they might not be enough for the right person or fear that they might lose her. Still, I always sensed there was something unfinished with Angela. I knew that if I got the chance, I would confront her. That moment arrived unexpectedly in March, just a month before my wedding with Jeannie. I had moved on, and my past with Angela felt like just a memory. One evening, while Jeannie and I were in our townhouse, our doorbell rang. Jeannie opened the door and saw Angela, who looked rough. "Caden, it's Angela, and she doesn't look well." I heard Angela's shaky voice and asked, "What happened?" Angela looked troubled and was visibly upset. I met someone. I thought it would work out, but it was a big mistake. I pressed, "What's his name? Did he hurt you?" She answered, "His name's Donovan Fisher. Caden, I made a mistake. He's not good for me." I inquired if her family knew she was in trouble. Angela started to cry, saying she was afraid to go home. I asked, "Is he still at our old house?" She nodded, scared. "He thinks he's tough," she said, still crying. I turned to Jeannie. "Let's get Angela some help." I knew I had to confront Fisher. Jeannie worried, but I assured her I would handle it. I left and drove to my old house, which still looked nice. I knocked on the door, and a man who looked out of shape answered. "Yes? May I help you?" he asked. "Are you Donovan Fisher?" I asked as I stepped inside. He confirmed, and I firmly told him he needed to leave. He seemed afraid as I made myself clear. I warned him never to come near Angela again. He moved to grab his things, and I followed him. I watched as he left, making sure to get his license plate. After he left, I called Jeannie. Angela had to take time off work to recover. We encouraged her to let her parents know what had happened. The next day, I returned to the old house and arranged for a cleaner. Jeannie helped me tidy up well. Angela stayed with us to heal. I checked on her old house regularly and never saw Fisher again, so I assumed he had gotten the message. Angela struggled to return home for 3 weeks, so Jeannie offered her our spare room. Angela lived with us until Jeannie and I got married. We secured the house we wanted and moved her lease to her. Eventually, Angela sold her house and attended our wedding. She became a close friend to Jeannie and me over time. She has dated since, but hasn't found the right person yet. I truly hope she does one day. As for the resolution in all of this, I suppose we can find some wisdom in the concept of moving forward and letting go of the past.